bit about myself today. So I have 4 kids. They are 11, 9, 5, and 3. I love reading lots of books with them. We have set a goal this year to read 500 books together. We are at about 300 right now. That mainly is picture books, but some chapter books in there. We love to build Legos. I'll show you something from that in a minute. I like to read a lot and watch science fiction, fantasy, mystery books. We've been watching a lot of Marvel everything lately with my family. My kids have been obsessed with that, and I am totally behind it. I love Shuri and Falcon. They're my favorite Marvel characters. My son, my 3-year-old, he loves to dress up like Black Panther, and I like to tell him that Shuri is the math science geek, so she's my favorite. I have lived in 5 states and 1 foreign country. Washington is my home, and it's where I grew up, my current home now, but I moved around a lot in between times. I love Broadway musicals. When I lived in New York City, I saw Aida, my favorite. I saw it 6 times on Broadway, but I saw lots of other ones too. Wicked, Hamilton, Frozen is one I saw recently with my kids last year before everything shut down. The Boy from Oz is my second most seen on Broadway. I saw it 3 times. Mamma Mia, I've seen a lot too with my my sister and my mom. We love to go spend some girls' night out at the theater in Seattle sometimes. My favorite foods, Korean barbecue. I love all the side dishes and some spicy Korean barbecue chicken. I love nachos, and I like chocolate. So I've been homeschooling my own kids for 7 years now. My oldest, we started with kindergarten, and we have not stopped since then. So he is just about to finish up 6th grade. My 5-year-old, we started homeschooling kindergarten this year, which for us is pretty loose. We don't structure very much in our own homeschool. We are lean a little bit more towards the unschooling, but we mainly read a lot of books and we do math. And we fit a few other things in there sometimes. So let me tell you a little bit about my education and experience here with math. I mean, you want somebody to teach your kids math who knows what they're doing. So let me show you a few funny pictures of my kids first here. So Julian, Matilda's in the middle there, Ellen's on the left, and Henry, my little munchkin. Here's a creation of Lego that we've got at our house. My son has worked on building his Lego town for quite a while now there. There's my other 2. All right. So I started with my Bachelor of Science in Mathematics. And then a few years later, I decided I didn't really want to do that. And I went back and I got a Master of Science in Engineering Management with a focus on disaster management, actually. And then I changed my mind again. And I went back into math, and I got my master's in teaching, secondary mathematics education, actually. And then I started teaching in New York City. I taught middle and high school for 7 years. So I taught every grade from 6th grade to 12th grade. I started in New York City. Then I moved to Busan, South Korea. And then I eventually moved to El Paso, Texas. And I taught there for 2.5 years. So I moved that last part because my husband was in the military. We moved to Texas. And then I quit teaching public school when my first child was born. I took a few years off there from working, and then I started independent tutoring in 2012. I decided I was ready to get back into it there, and I was kind of bored not doing math pretty regularly. And so ever since then, I have had around 2 to 10 students per week during the school year. Depends on the time of year, and I get more students typically during finals time, around that time, so January and June, I get extra calls for help. And then I typically have 1 or 2 during the summer months for review or special things. I have worked with everybody from 8 years old to adults. I have worked with adult college students older than myself, and quite a few working, who have come back to school after a long time away and they just didn't remember their math classes. Then I started teaching online math classes with a virtual school in 2017. And since then, I have taught about 3 classes per semester with 2 to 6 students per class. I have continued to tutor individual students also. So I have less now. I don't have up to 10 students per week normally now with my classes, but I typically have between 2 to 5 while I'm teaching classes. I've prepped students for the math portions of the GRE, the SAT, the GED, and the ASVAB. And we've had success with all of those. And I've worked with one family for 9 years now, since 2012, starting with middle school, and I'm all the way up into college calculus now with one of their students. They're all graduated from high school and into college and adulthood, and I'm still working with them a little bit. I love building those long-term relationships with students and their families. I love it when students keep going with me and continue to take my classes or continue to ask for more tutoring, because I love to have just those long-term fun relationships. With the one family that I've worked with for 9 years, I get Christmas cards, and I've been to all their graduation parties, and I just love having those relationships and seeing how the kids grow up and learning about their families. So this next year, I have some plans to teach algebra, which I have taught. I taught it the year before last, and it would be a 2-hour class every week. And this, let me show you we would use the Harold Jacobs Elementary Algebra book. I have my book here. This is an older version. So this is from 1971. I think there's a more recent version of the book, but they're both the same actually. They have the same types of problems, a little bit more updated language, more. They didn't change any of the numbers in the problems, I should say. They changed a few of the problems to make it more appropriate for the more recent times that, and things they might have said in the 70s were not quite as politically correct or something today, so they changed some of the wording that way. But otherwise, the textbook is the same, and it's a really great algebra textbook. So we'd meet every week for about 2 hours, and then there would definitely be some homework including there. So this is, more of a high school level class. 8th grade algebra, 8th graders could definitely participate, but it's a real more intense class than just to hang out and learn a little bit about math. This is a real work class. Then I would teach a class. This is for around 5th grade, a little leeway there, but around the 11-year-old age, depending on the advancement of your kid in math, depending on where they are. It could be an older kid, could be a younger kid, but around that. So it's fractions, decimals, and percents. And so in that semester, so it's a 1 semester class, we would be learning the relationship between those 3 concepts. We would be learning a little bit adding and subtracting, finding a little bit of percents of numbers, figuring out a little bit about money with decimals. We would not be doing any multiplication or division with those things. That would be in the 2nd semester, where we focus on multiplication and division of all kind of numbers. So we would have just regular whole numbers with big numbers, multiplication and division with those, focus a little bit on long division for a couple weeks. And then we would do the multiplication and division with fractions and with decimals, and a little bit more. You don't really do division so much with percents, but a little bit. And so we would focus on those pieces in that second semester. So they could be taken, you don't need to take them both. You could take one or the other, depending on needs, or you could take them both together and they would fit together. Then I would teach 3 short classes per semester, about 4 to 6 weeks each. And so these are some of the possible topics, not necessarily the final ones for the next year, but so kind of gives you an idea of what we would do. One of them would be rules of exponents and scientific notation, order of operations, which is one, so a concept that most adults still struggle with. So I think this is a really important one for kids to really grasp. Introduction to integers, so that we're talking about, positive and negative numbers there and how to use those. Probability, ratios and proportions, which are important. Solving proportions can really be a great concept that leads into all the way up through calculus. Actually, solving proportions really helps solve those higher math problems. I did this year with my calculus student, use some of the same concepts that I was teaching in 5th grade level math. We use the same thing there at a higher level. So it goes on and on. And number theory is learning about divisibility of numbers. It's learning about the greatest common factors, least common multiples, prime and composite numbers, kind of just understanding those rules and how those things work together. A lot of people get factors and multiples a little bit confused and don't know the rules of divisibility, how to easily check, is a number divisible by 3 or is it divisible by 5? How do you know that? And how can we kind of identify composite versus prime numbers a little bit more easily? So that one is not as practical use as, say, the ratios and proportions. Order of operations is not necessarily a practical, but a helpful one because it really builds on things. And that's one of those ones where adults see problems on Facebook and they can't solve them. So that's just a fun one for adults to know and remind themselves to say, I can tell you that this is the right answer on this Facebook problem that 99% of the people get wrong. So that's kind of my plan for this next year. I also will be offering individual tutoring through the Learning Corner. So you can pay for 2 hours or more at a time, and then we can split those up. However you want, the more hours you buy ahead of time, the better deal you get. We can split it up, for the whole semester. This year I did one student where we did like half an hour a week for a little while, and then we did 2 half hours a week instead of 1 full hour at a time, which worked better for her. Most of the time I do like an hour at a time, but we can definitely split up hours as much as you want. And I am always available to my students for help during the week. Anytime, they say, I have one help on the homework question, text me, email me, and say, hey, I just need some help on this question. And I'm willing to, text right back and say, hey, well, you need to do this in this particular step. A lot of times I'll just write out the whole problem and text a picture back and, kind of make some notes and say, you would do this and then this and etc. And, or, we can hop on Zoom for 5 minutes and I can explain it that way. I am always available to help out whenever needed on those extra little pieces. And there's no charge for those extra help. It's just, hey, you know what, Beth, I really just need this one problem is driving me crazy. Sure, hey, let's figure it out. I don't want you to be frustrated. And then some students also say, hey, you know what, I finished this homework really quickly. I'd like some more. I'd like maybe a little bit more challenging problems or something too. And I'm happy to just, send you another, 20 problems or whatever you want to practice. And resources too. I love just, hey, I would like to see, I would like to play a game with this, or I'd like to do something else. That's what I love to help people enjoy math. That's my whole goal. Is I don't want people to say math is boring, I hate it. I, like, oh, hey, look at this. I learned this and this is really cool. And I found out how to do this. I love seeing kids faces light up and I figured it out, or I found that it was fun. That's just, brings so much joy to me. And that's why I do this. Math is, so much fun to me. I want everybody else to enjoy it too. So I hope to see your kids in my classes this year.